Hello, my dear adventurers. It's your friend here, welcoming you back for another evening of shared stories and gentle exploration. Tonight, we're settling in for a long journey through the mysteries, theories, and speculation surrounding the final season of Stranger Things. We're going to talk about endings, about sacrifices, about the battles that await our beloved characters in Hawkins, Indiana. And we're going to take our time with it all, letting each theory unfold naturally, like smoke curling through the autumn air. Now, as we get comfortable and let the weight of the day slip away, I want you to know that this is going to be a comprehensive look at everything we know and everything fans are theorizing about Season 5. We'll talk about Vecna's terrifying transformation, about Eleven's final confrontation, about Will Byers finally getting his moment, about Max trapped somewhere between life and death, and about which of our heroes might not make it to see the sunrise when this is all over. There's loads to cover tonight, and we're going to explore it all with the depth and detail it deserves. If you've been following Stranger Things since that first season back in 2016, you know how deeply this show has embedded itself in our collective consciousness. It's been nearly a decade of watching these kids grow up, of seeing Hawkins transform from a sleepy Indiana town into ground zero for an interdimensional war. And now, as we approach the end, there's this bittersweet feeling hanging in the air. We want to know how it ends, but we're not quite ready to say goodbye. The Duffer Brothers have promised us answers. They've said that Season 5 will finally reveal the true nature of the Upside Down, will solve mysteries that have been building since the very beginning, will give closure to character arcs we've been following for years. But they've also warned us that it's going to hurt, that not everyone will survive, that the stakes have never been higher and the darkness has never been deeper. So grab your blanket, settle into your pillow, and let's begin this journey together. We'll start with what we actually know about Season 5, the concrete information that's been released, and then we'll dive deep into the theories, the speculation, the wild possibilities that fans have been discussing in forums and comment sections for years now. And through it all, we'll maintain that gentle, conversational tone that makes these long videos perfect for drifting off to sleep, even as we explore some pretty dark territory. Before we truly begin, I want to mention that if you enjoy these deep dives, these long-form explorations of the stories and worlds we love, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you might think, and it means I can keep creating these detailed, thoughtful videos for you to fall asleep to. But for now, let's leave all that behind and step into the world of Hawkins one final time. The final season of Stranger Things is almost here, and the wait has been longer than anyone anticipated. Production wrapped in December of 2024, and now in late 2025, we're finally approaching the release date. Netflix has structured Season 5 in a way that's both exciting and slightly torturous. Volume 1, consisting of the first 4 episodes, arrives on November 26, 2025, the day before Thanksgiving in the United States. Then there's a month-long wait until December 25th, Christmas Day, when Volume 2 drops with 3 more episodes. And then, on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2025, the series finale airs. One single episode to cap off everything, to bring the story home. It's a brilliant bit of scheduling, really. Netflix has essentially guaranteed that Stranger Things will dominate the holiday season will be part of family gatherings and year-end conversations, will send us into 2026 with the emotional weight of saying goodbye to these characters we've grown to love. The Duffer Brothers have said this structure was intentional, that they wanted the finale to feel like an event, something you mark on your calendar and experience together with millions of other viewers around the world. Season 5 will have 8 episodes total, down from the 9 episodes of Season 4. But don't let that fool you into thinking we're getting less content. The Duffer Brothers have confirmed that these episodes are long, with some pushing well past the hour mark and the finale potentially running close to 2 hours. We're talking about essentially 8 movies, each one packed with plot, character development, and the massive battle sequences that have become a hallmark of the show. The episode titles themselves tell a story. We start with The Crawl, which apparently features one of the most action-packed opening sequences the show has ever done. The Duffer Brothers have said Episode 1 is the most eventful premiere they've created, throwing us immediately into the chaos that Hawkins has become since the gates opened at the end of Season 4. There's no slow build this time, no gradual ramping up of tension. We're hitting the ground running, and from what we've heard, that breakneck pace never really lets up. Episode 2 is titled The Vanishing Of, with the name deliberately obscured. This is a direct callback to the series premiere, The Vanishing of Will Byers, and it tells us that someone else is going to disappear into the Upside Down or somewhere worse. Fan theories have mostly centered on Holly Wheeler, Mike and Nancy's younger sister, who was recast for Season 5 with a more experienced actress. The fact that they recast her at all suggests Holly is going to play a much larger role than she has in previous seasons, and having her vanish would create the same sense of desperate urgency that drove the entire first season. But some fans think it could be someone else entirely. Could it be Mike himself, Nancy, even Eleven? The Duffer Brothers love to play with expectations, and that blurred out name in the title reveal has spawned countless theories across Reddit and fan forums. Whoever it is, their disappearance is going to set events in motion that cannot be stopped. Episode 3 is The Turnbow Trap, which references a location we've seen in behind-the-scenes photos. Turnbow Land Development and Realty appears to be some kind of construction or real estate company in Hawkins, and Ross Duffer has posted images of upside-down corrupted billboards featuring the Turnbow name. This suggests that this company, or perhaps a specific piece of property they developed, is going to be crucial to the plot. Maybe it's a location where Vecna is hiding, or perhaps it's a trap he's laid for our heroes, hence the episode title. Sorcerer is Episode 4, and the Dungeons & Dragons reference is obvious. Throughout the series, D&D has served as a kind of map for understanding the supernatural threats. The Demogorgon, the Mind Flayer, Vecna himself, all of these names come from the game the boys have been playing since the beginning. A sorcerer in D&D is a spellcaster who draws power from an innate source, often a bloodline or a pact with otherworldly entities. This could refer to Eleven, whose powers are innate and tied to experimentation, or it could refer to Vecna, or Will, or even someone we haven't considered yet. Episode 5 is Shock Jock, which appears to be connected to a radio station called 50,000 WSQK Watts that's been featured in production photos. Radio has played a role in Stranger Things before, with communication being a major theme throughout the series. In Season 3, Dustin and Susie's long-distance communication was crucial. Could this episode involve someone trying to broadcast a message to warn people about what's happening in Hawkins? Or is the Shock Jock title referring to something more sinister, perhaps Vecna or the Mind Flayer using radio waves to spread their influence? Escape from Camazotz is episode 6, and this is where things get really interesting from a literary standpoint. Camazotz is a planet from Madeleine L'Englot's classic novel, A Wrinkle in Time, where it's depicted as a world under the complete control of a malevolent force called IT, which has stripped away all individuality and free will from the inhabitants. Everything on Camazotz operates in perfect, horrifying synchronization. The parallel to the Upside Down and the hive mind is obvious, and it suggests that our heroes are going to have to mount some kind of rescue mission or escape from a place where Vecna or the Mind Flayer has total control. But there's another possible meaning. In Mayan mythology, Camazotz is a bat god associated with the underworld and death. Season 4 introduced Demobats, those terrifying winged creatures that killed Eddie Munson, and they could factor heavily into this episode. Perhaps Camazotz is a location within the Upside Down, a kind of nest or stronghold where these creatures originate. Either way, the title promises something dark and claustrophobic, an episode where escape itself is the goal rather than victory. Episode 7 is simply called The Bridge, which could be literal or metaphorical. A bridge connects 2 points, spans a gap, allows passage from one side to another. Could this be about bridging the gap between our world and the Upside Down? About someone serving as a bridge, a conduit between dimensions? Well, Byers has been described as having a connection to the Upside Down that no one else possesses. Maybe he becomes the bridge, the link that allows the others to reach Vecna or to close the gates permanently. Or perhaps it's about bridging the past and the present, about finally understanding how everything from Season 1 onward has been part of Vecna's plan. And then we come to the finale, Episode 8, titled The Right Side Up. It's a perfect mirror to the Upside Down, bringing the series full circle. The title suggests restoration, a return to normalcy, the world being set right after years of being inverted and corrupted. But it also carries a note of melancholy. To get to the right side up, our heroes are going to have to go through hell. The Duffer Brothers have said this finale will be emotionally devastating, that it made the entire cast cry at the table read. Whatever happens in The Right Side Up, it's going to leave us changed. Now let's talk about the setting. Season 5 takes place in the fall of 1987, which means there's been an 18-month time jump since the end of Season 4. That's significant for a few reasons. First, it allows the young actors, who are now in their 20s, to more believably portray teenagers who've aged. But more importantly, it raises the question of what's been happening in Hawkins during those 18 months. The gates are open. The Upside Down is bleeding into our world. The military has quarantined the town, and yet life, somehow, has continued. The official synopsis tells us that Hawkins is scarred by the opening of the rifts, that the town is under military quarantine, and that the government is intensifying its hunt for 11. Our heroes are united by a single goal: find and kill Vecna. But here's the catch. Vecna has vanished. His whereabouts are unknown, his plans a mystery. And as the anniversary of Will's disappearance approaches, so does a heavy, familiar dread. The final battle is looming, and with it, a darkness more powerful and more deadly than anything they've faced before. This setup is fascinating because it subverts expectations. You might think that with the gates open and Vecna having achieved his goal from Season 4, he would immediately launch a full-scale invasion. But instead, there's been this strange period of waiting, of preparation. Vecna is playing a longer game than anyone realized, and that 18-month gap is going to be crucial to understanding his true endgame. Let's dive deeper into what's happened to Vecna between seasons, because this is where things get properly unsettling. At the end of Season 4, Nancy, Steve, and Robin managed to wound him severely. They shot him multiple times, set him on fire, and watched him fall from the attic window of the Creel house. For a moment, it seemed like they might have actually killed him, but of course, they didn't. Vecna survived, retreated into the Upside Down, and disappeared. According to Ross Duffer, Vecna has been rebuilding himself during that 18-month time jump, and the new form he's taken is significantly more terrifying than what we saw in Season 4. Ross described the new Vecna as having holes and gaps in his body, being more monstrous and less human, and noted that he's quite a bit scarier than before. Jamie Campbell Bower, the actor who brings Vecna to life through hours of prosthetic application and performance, has teased that the transformation is shocking, even for viewers who thought they were prepared. What's particularly interesting is the language used to describe this transformation. Vecna isn't just healing or regenerating. He's rebuilding, which suggests a deliberate reconstruction rather than natural recovery. It's as if the damage he sustained forced him to remake himself, and in doing so, he's become something even more alien, even further removed from the human Henry Creel once was. The prosthetics team has apparently created an even more elaborate design, one that shows both the strength Vecna has gained and the terrible price of his survival. But Vecna's physical transformation is only part of the story. Season 5 is also completing a massive retcon that recontextualizes the entire series. Netflix recently released the opening scene of Season 5, and it includes a flashback to Season 1 that reveals something we never knew. When Will Byers was captured by the Demogorgon and taken to the Upside Down, it wasn't random. The Demogorgon was acting under Vecna's orders. Will was specifically targeted, specifically chosen for a purpose we're only now beginning to understand. This revelation changes everything. It means that Vecna has been the puppet master from the very beginning, that every crisis, every monster, every tragedy in Hawkins has been part of his plan. The Demogorgon that killed Barb and terrorized Season 1 was his servant. The Mind Flayer that possessed Will in Season 2 was his creation, shaped by his will when he first arrived in the Upside Down. The entire Russian plot in Season 3, their attempts to reopen the gate, played right into his hands because it gave him another avenue of influence into our world. And Season 4's murders, those weren't just about opening gates. They were about something more personal, more calculated. Vecna chose his victims based on their trauma and guilt, yes, but there was strategy there too. He was weakening Hawkins psychologically, creating fear and division, preparing the town for conquest. every move he's made has been leading to this final confrontation, and our heroes are only now realizing how thoroughly they've been manipulated. The question that haunts fan theories is why Vecna waited 18 months. If he opened the gates, if he has access to our world, why not invade immediately? Why give the military time to set up a quarantine? Why allow 11 time to train and prepare? Some fans think it's arrogance, but that Vecna is so confident in his ultimate victory that he's savoring the anticipation. Others believe it's strategic, that he's been using this time to gather strength, to rebuild his army, to prepare for a final assault that will be so overwhelming that no resistance will be possible. But there's a third theory that's gaining traction, one that's more unsettling because it suggests Vecna is actually afraid. He's waited because he's worried about 11. Despite having the gates open, despite his monstrous army and his godlike powers in the Upside Down, there's one threat he can't fully account for. A young girl who's already defeated him once, who's already sent him screaming into another dimension, who's already proven that she can match his power and potentially exceed it. The 18-month gap might be Vecna's way of testing 11, of waiting to see what she'll do before he commits to his final plan. From the released footage and interviews, we know that Season 5 opens with an action sequence where 11 and her friends launch an assault on Vecna. They're not waiting for him to come to them anymore. They're taking the fight into the Upside Down, trying to end this before it gets worse. And according to sources, this opening gambit is what triggers everything that follows. Vecna has been waiting, watching, and when he sees that 11 is ready to fight, he finally pulls the trigger on his invasion. Now let's talk about the Upside Down itself, because this is one of the most debated topics in the entire Stranger Things fandom, and Season 5 is supposed to finally give us answers. Ever since Nancy discovered in Season 4 that the Upside Down version of Hawkins is frozen on November 6th, 1983, the day Will vanished and the day 11 first opened a gate to this dimension, fans have been trying to understand what that means. The most straightforward interpretation is that 11 didn't just open a door to the Upside Down, she created the snapshot version we see. When she made psychic contact with the Demogorgon while searching for the Russian agent, something happened that went beyond simply establishing a connection between dimensions. Her power, her fear, the intensity of that moment somehow imprinted our world onto the Upside Down, creating a perfect mirror image of Hawkins as it existed in that instant. But here's where it gets complicated. We know from Season 4 that when Henry Creel, 1, was banished to the Upside Down by 11 in 1979, he ended up in a very different place. The dimension he fell into was a vast, alien landscape filled with swirling particles and strange storms. It wasn't a mirror of Hawkins. It was something else entirely, something much older and stranger. So the question becomes, are there two Upside Downs, or did 11's actions in 1983 transform the dimension that Henry had been reshaping for 4 years? Millie Bobby Brown herself has weighed in on this debate, stating in interviews that she believes 11 didn't create the Upside Down, but rather opened a gate to something that already existed. She said the alternate dimension was always there, always lurking beneath Hawkins, like a dark reflection waiting to be revealed. Her perspective is that 11's role was as a doorway, not a creator. She gave access to something ancient and terrible, but she didn't bring it into being. This interpretation is supported by the fact that the Russians were already aware of the Upside Down's existence before 11 opened the first gate. The Philadelphia experiment of 1943, which is referenced in the show's lore, involved the USS Eldridge briefly phasing into this dimension. Soldiers died, reality was torn, and the government has been trying to understand and control access to the Upside Down ever since. If it already existed in 1943, then clearly 11 didn't create it in 1983. But then why is it frozen on November 6th, 1983? Why does Nancy's diary in the Upside Down version of her room end on that date? Why hasn't anything changed in that mirror world since the day Will was taken? The most compelling theory is that when 11 opened the gate and made contact with the hive mind, she didn't create the Upside Down, but she did create a copy of Hawkins within it. Think of it as taking a photograph. The camera doesn't create what it captures, but it does freeze a moment in time, preserving it in a way that becomes its own kind of reality. The original Upside Down, the one Henry Creel fell into, was an empty stage, a blank canvas of alien energy and potential. Henry shaped it, gave it form, created the Mind Flayer, and established control over its creatures. But it was still just a swirling void, with no connection to our world beyond the psychic influence he could exert. Then 11 opened the gate, and in that moment of connection, the vast psychic energy of her power, combined with the terror of encountering the Demogorgon, created an imprint. Hawkins was suddenly duplicated in the Upside Down. Every building, every street, every detail captured in that instant and preserved forever. This theory explains why the Upside Down looks like Hawkins, but is frozen in time. It's a snapshot, a psychic photograph that has become a permanent feature of that dimension, and it explains why Vecna was able to use it so effectively. He had been working with an abstract space, but 11 gave him a map, a perfect replica of the town he wanted to destroy. She handed him a weapon without realizing it. The Duffer Brothers have confirmed that Season 5 will reveal the true nature of the Upside Down, will answer these questions that have been building since the very first episode. In interviews, they've said that there's a 25-page document they wrote for Netflix back in Season 1 that goes into the mythology of the Upside Down in detail, explaining its origin, its purpose, its rules. Most of that document has remained secret, with only hints being revealed in the show itself. But Season 5 is going to pull back the curtain completely. Some fans speculate that the Upside Down isn't actually a parallel dimension at all. They think it might be the future, a post-apocalyptic version of our world where Vecna, or something worse, has won. This theory suggests that when 11 tears holes in space-time, she's not just reaching across dimensions, but also across time, that the decayed, corrupted version of Hawkins we see is what our world becomes if Vecna succeeds. It's a dark thought, and it would add a layer of urgency to the final battle. Our heroes wouldn't just be fighting to save the present. They'd be fighting to prevent this horrible future from ever coming to pass. Other fans lean into the idea that the Upside Down is alive, that it's a conscious entity that's been waiting for a connection to our world. The vines act like nerves, sharing information across the entire dimension. The creatures are all connected through a hive mind. The dimension itself seems to react to intrusions, seems to have a will, and a purpose beyond just being a place. Maybe the Upside Down has been hungry, has been reaching out across the barriers between worlds, and humans like Henry Creel and Eleven have given it the purchase it needs to finally break through. There's also the question of the Mind Flayer's true role in all of this. Vecna claims to have created the Mind Flayer, to have shaped it from the particles and energy of the Upside Down when he first arrived there. He shows Nancy a vision of himself extending his will into the swirling chaos and molding it into the spider-like shape that terrorized seasons 2 and 3. But many fans don't believe him. They think Vecna is either lying or deluding himself, that the Mind Flayer is actually the original intelligence of the Upside Down, and it's been using Henry all along. Consider the evidence. When Henry Creel was a child, before he ever went to the Upside Down, he was fascinated by a black widow spider he found in his house. He kept it, studied it, drew pictures of it. Some fans believe this wasn't just a child's morbid curiosity. They think it was the Mind Flayer reaching across dimensions, planting ideas in a receptive mind, grooming a future servant. If the Mind Flayer could influence Henry as a child, then everything that came after, his powers, his violence, his transformations into Vecna, could all be part of a plan that's much larger than Henry himself realizes. This theory positions Vecna as a powerful but ultimately secondary villain. The real threat, the original evil, is the Mind Flayer. It's been manipulating events from the beginning, using Henry as its champion, shaping the Upside Down to serve its purposes. And if that's true, then defeating Vecna won't end the threat. Even if our heroes manage to kill him, the Mind Flayer will still be out there, waiting for another opportunity, another pawn to corrupt and use. The Duffer Brothers have been deliberately ambiguous about this. They've described the relationship between Vecna and the Mind Flayer as complex, as symbiotic in ways that will become clearer in Season 5. That language suggests that neither is fully in control, that they've become intertwined in a way that makes separating them impossible. Maybe killing Vecna will weaken the Mind Flayer, or maybe it will free the Mind Flayer to act more directly without the limitations of working through a human agent. What we know for certain is that the Upside Down is more than just a setting. It's a character in its own right, with motivations and agency that we don't fully understand yet. It wants something. It's reaching for our world with intent and purpose. And whatever the truth of its origin, whatever the relationship between the dimension, the Mind Flayer, and Vecna, Season 5 is going to force our heroes to confront it directly, to understand it in order to defeat it. Now let's shift our focus to Eleven herself, because her role in Season 5 is going to be absolutely crucial, and the theories surrounding her fate are some of the most emotionally charged in the entire fandom. We know from the official synopsis and from interviews with the cast and creators that when Season 5 begins, Eleven is in hiding. The government is hunting her more aggressively than ever, seeing her as a weapon that needs to be controlled or neutralized. She's being hidden and protected by Hopper, who's taken on the role not just of her father, but of her trainer. David Harbour has described Season 5 as showing a different side of the Hopper-Eleven relationship. In previous seasons, Hopper was trying to give her a normal life, trying to protect her from the dangers of her past and her powers. But now, with the gates open and Vecna preparing his final assault, There's no more room for that kind of protection. Hopper knows that Eleven is going to have to fight, that she's the only one with a real chance of stopping Vecna. So instead of trying to keep her safe, he's preparing her for war. The released footage shows Eleven training, honing her abilities in ways we haven't seen before. She's not just practicing telekinesis or remote viewing. She's learning combat applications of her powers, learning how to use them offensively and defensively in high-pressure situations. Ross Duffer has said that Eleven has the same fundamental abilities she's always had, but she's learning to use them in new and exciting ways. She's becoming a weapon in the truest sense, but one who's choosing her own path rather than being controlled by others. This evolution is important because it addresses one of the ongoing tensions in Eleven's character. Throughout the series, she's struggled with being seen as just a tool, just a means to an end. Brenner viewed her that way. The government views her that way. Even some of her friends, in moments of crisis, have treated her powers as the solution to every problem. But Eleven is a person first, with her own desires and fears and need for agency. The training sequence with Hopper seems to be about her reclaiming her power, choosing to be a fighter not because she has to be, but because she wants to protect the people she loves. The government's pursuit of her adds another layer of tension. She can't just focus on Vecna. She also has to evade capture, has to stay hidden while still preparing for battle. This creates a situation where Eleven is operating without the full support and resources she might need. She's relying on a small circle of people, training in secret, building up her strength while the clock ticks down to the final confrontation. One of the most persistent theories about Season 5 is that Eleven will have to sacrifice herself to permanently close the gates and defeat Vecna. This theory has been building for years, with fans pointing to all the foreshadowing scattered throughout the series. Hopper's letter in Season 3, where he tells her she doesn't need to be the hero all the time, feels like a setup for her choosing to be the hero one final time. Joyce's repeated insistence that Eleven is just a kid and shouldn't have to bear this burden reads like a tragic irony, because of course she's going to have to bear it. And Mike's desperate need to protect her, his fear of losing her, all of that points toward a heartbreaking ending where she makes the ultimate sacrifice to save everyone. The sacrifice theory usually involves Eleven using her powers to such an extreme degree that it costs her life. Maybe she has to physically enter the Upside Down and close it from within, sealing herself on the other side. Maybe she has to merge with the hive mind to destroy it from the inside, becoming one with the thing she's fighting. Maybe her powers, pushed to their absolute limit, simply burn her out, consuming her life force to achieve the impossible. It's a tragic but fitting end for a character whose entire life has been shaped by struggle and loss. Eleven has never had a normal childhood, has never hit the chance to just be Jane Hopper, regular teenager. She's always been the girl with powers, the girl who can save the day, the girl who bears the weight of impossible choices. A sacrifice would be heroic, would cement her legacy as the person who saved the world, even though the world never really gave her a fair chance at living in it. But there's another theory, one that's equally popular and perhaps more hopeful. Some fans believe that Eleven will survive, but will lose her powers permanently in the process of defeating Vecna. This would be a different kind of sacrifice, giving up the thing that's defined her entire existence in order to save everyone. Without her powers, she would finally be truly free to be just Jane, just a normal person. She could go to school, make friends, have a regular life, but she'd also be giving up a fundamental part of herself, the abilities that have been both her curse and her gift. This ending feels very much in line with what the Duffer Brothers might go for. It's bittersweet. 11 lives, which is hopeful, but she's fundamentally changed, which carries weight and consequence. She gets the normal life she's always wanted, but only by sacrificing the extraordinary power that made her special. It's the kind of ending that would leave viewers emotionally satisfied, but also a little sad, which is exactly the tone the Duffer Brothers have promised for the series finale. There's also a more complex theory that involves Eleven not fighting Vecna through sheer power, but by understanding him, by connecting with him on a psychic level. Vecna is one after all. He's the first child of Brenner's program, the blueprint for what Eleven herself became. They're mirrors of each other in many ways, both incredibly powerful psychics shaped by trauma and experimentation. Some fans think that Eleven will have to enter Vecna's mind, not to destroy him from within, but to show him another way, to offer him the redemption that he's always rejected. This theory is less popular because it feels almost too compassionate, too forgiving for a villain as monstrous as Vecna. He's killed so many people, has caused so much suffering. The idea that he could be reached, that there's still humanity in him that could be appealed to, seems almost offensive given the magnitude of his crimes. But Eleven has always been characterized by her capacity for empathy and connection. Even when fighting, she's tried to understand her enemies. Maybe that compassion is what ultimately defeats Vecna, not by overpowering him, but by offering him something he's never had, understanding and acceptance. Millie Bobby Brown has been very careful in interviews not to reveal whether Eleven survives season 5. She said the ending made her emotional, that Eleven's arc concludes in a satisfying way, but she won't confirm life or death. That ambiguity is probably intentional, keeping fans guessing until the very end. But one thing that seems certain is that whatever happens to Eleven, it's going to be earned. Her journey has been the heart of the series from the very beginning, and the Duffer Brothers know that they need to give her an ending that honors everything she's been through. One aspect of Eleven's story in season 5 that's particularly intriguing is her mission to save Max. At the end of season 4, Max died. Her heart stopped. Her bones were broken, and she told Lucas she couldn't see or feel anything. But Eleven, through sheer force of will and power, brought her back, or at least, she brought her body back. Max is alive in the technical sense. Her heart is beating, but she's in a coma. When Eleven tries to find her consciousness through her powers, she finds nothing. Max isn't there. She's somewhere else, somewhere Eleven can't reach. This has led to one of the most discussed theories about season 5, that Max's consciousness is trapped inside Vecna's mind. When Vecna kills someone, he consumes them, absorbs them into himself. His victims become part of him, their trauma and memories feeding his power. But Max didn't fully die. Eleven intervened at the last second before the process could complete. So Max might be stuck in a kind of limbo, her mind held captive in Vecna's psychic space while her body remains in a coma in the real world. If this theory is correct, then part of Eleven's mission in Season 5 will be to rescue Max from Vecna's mind. She'll have to enter the same psychic space where Max is trapped and pull her out. But that would mean confronting Vecna on his home turf, in a realm where he has absolute control. It's incredibly dangerous, perhaps even suicidal, and there's no guarantee that Max can be saved. She might be too deeply integrated into Vecna's consciousness to extract. The attempt to rescue her might cost Eleven everything. Some fans have taken this theory even further, suggesting that Vecna might be using Max's body as a vessel. With his own physical form damaged and weakened, he might jump into Max, possessing her and using her as a host. And this would create an absolutely heartbreaking scenario where Eleven would have to fight her best friend, knowing that Max is trapped inside, powerless to stop Vecna from controlling her. It would be psychological warfare at its most cruel, forcing Eleven to choose between saving Max and stopping Vecna, knowing she might not be able to do both. The idea of Vecna possessing Max also opens up interesting possibilities for how Max herself might fight back. Unlike Vecna's other victims, Max is still alive. Her body hasn't been destroyed. If her consciousness is trapped in Vecna's mind, she's not just a passive victim. She could be fighting from within, sabotaging his plans, weakening him in ways he doesn't expect. The final battle might not just be Eleven versus Vecna. It might be Eleven and Max together, attacking from outside and inside simultaneously. Lucas's role in all of this cannot be overlooked. The synopsis mentions that he visits Max in the hospital daily, playing her favorite song, holding on to hope that she'll wake up. His devotion to her is going to be a major emotional thread in Season 5. If Max does wake up, if Eleven succeeds in rescuing her, the reunion between Max and Lucas could be one of the most cathartic moments of the entire series. But if Max doesn't make it, if she dies permanently this time, Lucas is going to be shattered. Caleb McLaughlin has said in interviews that Lucas carries a heavy burden of guilt, feeling like he failed to protect Max when it mattered most. That guilt could drive him to take risks in the final battle, to put himself in danger because he feels like he has nothing left to lose. Now let's turn our attention to Will Byers, because if there's one thing the Duffer Brothers have been absolutely clear about, it's that Season 5 is Will's season. From the very beginning, when the show was first titled Montauk and existed only as a concept, Will was always meant to be central to the story. He was the boy who vanished, the catalyst for everything that followed. But in the later seasons, as the cast expanded and other characters took center stage, Will got somewhat sidelined. He became the quiet one, the supportive friend, the kid who'd been through trauma but was trying to move past it. Season 5 is going to change that. Noah Schnapp has confirmed that Will's role is massive, that he's at the center of the action in a way he hasn't been since Season 2. The official synopsis describes him as having a connection to the evil in the Upside Down, and Matt Duffer has said they're going to explore what that connection means and what it means for Will moving forward. We know from previous seasons that Will has retained an ability to sense the Upside Down. It manifests as a physical sensation, a tingling on the back of his neck, a coldness, a feeling of wrongness. He's used this ability to warn the others when danger is near, when the Mind Flayer is active, when gates are opening. But Season 5 is going to reveal that this connection goes much deeper than anyone realized. One popular theory is that Will has dormant psychic powers similar to Eleven's. This would explain why Vecna specifically targeted him in Season 1, why Will survived a week in the Upside Down when everyone else who was taken died within hours. Vecna recognized something in Will, saw potential that could be useful or dangerous. The Mind Flayer's possession of Will in Season 2 might have been an attempt to awaken these powers, to corrupt Will and turn him into another weapon. In Dungeons & Dragons, Will's character is a cleric, a magic user who channels divine power. That choice of character class has always seemed significant, and the fact that Will is described in the companion book Stranger Things, Worlds Turned Upside Down, as having a true neutral alignment, the same alignment as Vecna, suggests a deliberate parallel between them. They're both magic users, both connected to forces beyond normal human understanding. The difference is that Will has chosen to use his connection to help his friends, while Vecna has chosen domination and destruction. Another theory suggests that Will is actually the key to defeating the Mind Flayer. He was possessed by it, was part of its hive mind for a significant period. Even after the exorcism in Season 2, traces of that connection might remain. If Will can tap into that residual link, he might be able to access the Mind Flayer's thoughts, anticipate its moves, maybe even influence it in some way. He could be the inside man, the mole in the enemy's consciousness, providing intelligence that no one else could possibly obtain. But there's a darker theory that some fans have proposed, that Will has been compromised all along, that the Mind Flayer left more than just a connection. It left instructions, programming, a sleeper agent waiting to be activated. According to this theory, Will is going to betray his friends, not because he wants to, but because he's been corrupted on a level deeper than anyone realized. The Mind Flayer in Season 2 didn't just possess him, it changed him, altered his core programming, and now, in the final battle, that programming will activate. This theory is supported by Will's increasingly isolated and conflicted behavior in Season 4. He's struggling with feelings he can't express, with being different from his friends, with not fitting in anymore. Some of that is about his sexuality, about his unrequited feelings for Mike, but some of it might be about feeling something dark stirring inside him, something that scares him, but that he can't fully articulate or resist. The more hopeful interpretation is that Will's isolation and difference are actually his strengths. He's been through more than any of them. He's seen the Upside Down from the inside. He understands it in a way that even Eleven doesn't. And that understanding, that hard-won knowledge, is going to be what allows him to help defeat Vecna. Will isn't the weapon. He's the guide, the translator, the person who can explain the rules of this terrible game they're all playing. Noah Schnapp has said that Will is more than just the kid who got kidnapped, that Season 5 shows what's beyond that trauma, what Will has become and who he's meant to be. That sounds like a character who's coming into his own power, who's finally getting his moment to be the hero rather than the victim. If that's the case, then Will's arc is going to be one of the most satisfying of the entire season. There's also the question of Will's painting, which played such a significant role in season 4. He painted a picture of the party fighting a red dragon, with Mike at the center as the heart of the group. He gave it to Mike as a way of expressing feelings he couldn't verbalize, using D&D imagery to say what he couldn't say directly. But some fans think the painting is also prophetic, that it's showing something that will happen in season 5. Maybe there really is going to be a dragon, a massive final boss that the party has to face together. Or maybe the dragon is metaphorical, representing Vecna, or the Mind Flayer in its ultimate form. Will's connection to art, to creation, and expression has always been important to his character. He's the artist of the group, the one who sees the world differently, who can translate the horrific into something visual and understandable. That creative ability might be key to solving the mystery of the Upside Down, to finding a weakness in Vecna's plans. Artists see patterns, see possibilities that others miss. Will's artistic nature isn't just character flavor, it's going to be crucial. One thing we can say for certain is that Will is not going to be sidelined anymore. The Duffer Brothers have promised that he's front and center, that his story comes full circle in season 5. The boy who vanished in episode 1 is going to be the one who, in some way, brings everything to an end, whether that's through sacrifice, through heroism, through some unique ability only he possesses. We don't know yet. But Will Byers is going to matter, and his journey is going to be one of the emotional cores of the final season. Now let's talk about the aspect of season 5 that no one wants to face, but everyone is thinking about: who's gonna die. The Duffer Brothers have made it clear that not everyone survives. They've called season 5 their darkest, most devastating season. They've compared it to the ending of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, which featured multiple significant character deaths. In short, they've warned us that this is going to hurt. The question is not whether people will die, but who and how many. And the fan theories on this subject range from optimistic to absolutely soul-crushing. Let's start with the most discussed death prediction, Steve Harrington. Steve's potential death has been a topic of speculation since season 4, when the show itself seemed to be setting up his heroic sacrifice. Joe Keery has been very emotional in interviews about saying goodbye to the character, and Steve's arc has always been about redemption, about the jerk from season 1 transforming into the group's protector, the babysitter, the guy who puts everyone else before himself. That kind of arc traditionally ends in a heroic death, and Steve diving into danger one last time to save the kids, especially Dustin, would be a full circle moment that's both tragic and fitting. The season 5 trailer has only fueled these concerns. Steve appears in it, but not as much as you'd expect for a main character. There's a brief shot of Dustin looking devastated, possibly crying, and he appears to be driving Steve's car. Some fans have interpreted this as evidence that Steve is dead and Dustin has inherited his car, driving it in his memory. It's the kind of detail that once you notice it is hard to shake, but other fans think the lack of Steve in the trailer is a deliberate misdirect. The Duffer Brothers know how much people love Steve, know how big his death would be. Maybe they're hiding him precisely because he survives, and his survival is a major twist. Maybe the trailer is edited to make us think he's doomed, but the actual season subverts that expectation in a meaningful way. Then there's Max, who technically already died once. The question is whether she comes back or whether her death in Season 4 becomes permanent in Season 5. If Max is trapped in Vecna's mind and Eleven can't save her, then Max dying for real would be a continuation of the tragedy that began at the end of Season 4. It would also be absolutely devastating for Lucas, whose entire emotional arc is now tied to saving her. But there's something almost cruel about killing Max after all the efforts to save her, after giving her a death scene and then walking it back. If the Duffer Brothers do kill her in Season 5, it needs to be earned, needs to be part of a larger story, rather than just shock value. Maybe Max sacrifices herself from inside Vecna's mind, weakening him at a crucial moment. Maybe she's the key to his defeat, but dies in the process. That would give her death meaning and weight, would make it feel like a choice she made, rather than just a tragedy that happened to her. Hopper is another character whose death has been faked before. He apparently died in Season 3, only to return in Season 4. That doesn't mean he's safe. If anything, it might make his actual death more likely, because viewers would be shocked that this time it's real. Hopper has found a family in Eleven, and Joyce has found something worth living for after years of grief and self-destruction following his daughter Sarah's death. A sacrifice to protect that family, especially to protect Eleven, would be a powerful and tragic way to end his story. But David Harbour has been careful not to confirm or deny anything. He said Hopper's journey comes to a meaningful conclusion, which could mean death, but could also mean something else. Maybe Hopper survives but is changed, traumatized in ways that will take years to heal. Maybe he loses something important, like his ability to be a police officer or protector, and has to learn to define himself in a new way. The really controversial theory is that one of the original 4 boys might die: Mike, Will, Lucas, or Dustin. These are the characters who've been there since Episode 1, the core friend group that the entire show is built around. Killing one of them would be absolutely devastating, would drive home the stakes in a way that nothing else could. But it would also be almost unbearably dark for a show that, despite everything, has always maintained a current of hope and the power of friendship. If one of the boys does die, the most likely candidate is probably Dustin. He's the heart of the group, the one who keeps spirits up, who believes in his friends, who never loses his enthusiasm, even when things are at their darkest. His death would hurt the most because it would feel like losing that optimism, that belief that things can work out. It would be especially tragic after Eddie's death in Season 4, which Dustin witnessed and which has clearly affected him deeply. Gaten Matarazzo has said that Dustin is not dealing well with Eddie's loss, that he's trying to keep Eddie's spirit alive, but is struggling. If Dustin dies, it could be in a moment where he's trying to honor Eddie's sacrifice, trying to be brave like his friend was. But Mike dying would devastate Eleven and Will, both of whom love him in different ways. Mike has been the leader, the planner, the one who brings everyone together. His death would fracture the group in fundamental ways. Lucas dying would destroy Max, especially if it happened while trying to save her. And Will dying would be a final, cruel joke on the boy who started all of this by vanishing into the Upside Down, as if he was never meant to escape his fate. According to various sources and leaks, Season 50 will feature multiple main character deaths, not just one or two. The Duffer Brothers have reportedly told the cast to prepare for several goodbyes. That suggests we could lose anywhere from 3 to 5 major characters, which is a staggering number for a show that's been relatively gentle with its core cast until now. Supporting characters are also at risk. Karen and Ted Wheeler, Mike and Nancy's parents, are frequently mentioned in death prediction threads. The Wheeler family being targeted, especially with Holly potentially vanishing in episode 2, would add a personal, intimate horror to the larger apocalyptic stakes. Murray Bauman, the conspiracy theorist turned action hero, is another name that comes up frequently. His death could be heroic, using his knowledge of Russian operations and his willingness to take risks to strike a crucial blow against the enemy. Erica Sinclair, Lucas's little sister, has become a fan favorite, but her youth doesn't necessarily protect her. In fact, killing a child would be one of the darkest things the show could do, would signal that absolutely no one is safe. But it seems unlikely that the Duffer Brothers would go that far. Erica represents the next generation, the kids who are learning from the older group. Her survival might be important to show that even if everyone else falls, the fight continues. Then there's the question of Eleven herself. Does she survive? Multiple theories suggest she doesn't, that her ultimate sacrifice is death. But there are also theories that she survives, but at great cost, losing her powers, losing Mike, losing Hopper, becoming the last one standing in a world that she saved but can barely recognize. What we can say with some confidence is that the Duffer Brothers understand the emotional weight of these characters. They're not going to kill people randomly or for shock value. Every death will serve the story, will mean something, will be earned through the character's journey. That doesn't make it any easier to anticipate, but it does suggest that whatever losses we suffer, they'll at least be meaningful. One of the most emotionally complex theories circulating about Season 5 involves Holly Wheeler, Mike and Nancy's youngest sister. As mentioned earlier, Episode 2 is titled The Vanishing of Swoop, with the name obscured, and the prevailing theory is that Holly is who vanishes. This isn't just speculation. Holly was recast for Season 5 with Nell Fisher, an actress from Evil Dead Rise, who has experience carrying more dramatic weight than the previous child actor who played Holly. You don't recast a background character unless you're planning to give them significant screen time and important plot developments. Behind-the-scenes photos have shown Nell Fisher on set with Jamie Campbell Bower in his Henry Creel costume before the transformation into Vecna. This suggests that Holly either encounters Henry in a flashback, or more disturbingly, that she meets Vecna in his more human form, perhaps through a psychic vision or in the Upside Down itself. Some fans have theorized that Holly has some kind of sensitivity to the Upside Down that hasn't been explored yet. In Season 1, there's a scene where Holly is following flickering Christmas lights through the house and points them out to Joyce. It's a small moment, easily missed, but it suggests that Holly could see or sense something that others couldn't. Young children in horror narratives often have a connection to supernatural forces that adults have lost. Maybe Holly has always been able to perceive the Upside Down in small ways, and now that the barriers between dimensions are breaking down, she's becoming a target. If Holly vanishes into the Upside Down the same way Will did in Season 1, it would create a devastating parallel for the Wheeler family. They've been on the periphery of the main action for most of the series. Karen and Ted know something is wrong in Hawkins, but they don't know the full scope of what their children have been fighting. Nancy and Mike have been protecting them from the truth, trying to keep their parents and sister safe from knowledge that could destroy them. But if Holly is taken, if the Upside Down invades their home and steals their youngest child, then the Wheelers would be pulled into the horror in the most direct and personal way possible. This would also affect Nancy and Mike profoundly. Nancy especially has been characterized by her need to protect her family while also pursuing the truth. If Holly is taken because Nancy was too focused on fighting Vecna, or if Mike feels like he failed to protect his little sister, the guilt would be crushing. It would add emotional stakes to the battle that go beyond just saving the world. They'd be fighting to save their family, their baby sister, who should never have been pulled into this nightmare. Some theories go even darker, suggesting that Holly doesn't just vanish, but becomes corrupted by the Upside Down, turned into something monstrous, like Will almost was in Season 2. The idea of having to save Holly from Vecna's influence, or worse, having to fight her because she's been turned into a weapon, would be almost unbearably tragic. But the Duffer Brothers have shown they're willing to put characters through extreme trauma, so this possibility can't be ruled out. Another angle on Holly's story involves her potential psychic abilities. If sensitivity to the Upside Down runs in families, and if certain bloodlines are more connected to the dimensional barriers, then maybe the Wheelers have some innate connection that hasn't been explored. Mike has always been the heart of the group, the one who connects everyone. Nancy has incredible bravery and determination. Maybe these qualities aren't just personality traits, but reflections of something deeper, some fundamental connection to the forces at play in Hawkins. Holly being psychic or sensitive to the Upside Down would also create an interesting parallel with Eleven. Both would be young girls with powers, but where Eleven was created through experimentation, Holly's abilities would be natural, innate. Maybe that difference is important. Maybe natural psychics have abilities that lab-created ones don't, or vice versa. Holly could be a key to understanding how the Upside Down connects to certain people, why some are targeted and others aren't. Now let's talk about something that's been conspicuously absent from much of the fan speculation, but which might be crucial: the military quarantine of Hawkins. The official synopsis tells us that the government has placed the town under military control, that there's a massive operation underway to contain the Upside Down. This is a significant escalation from previous seasons where the government's involvement was mostly covert, behind-the-scenes manipulation, and cover-ups. Now the military is operating openly, with Colonel Sullivan, the antagonist from Season 4, who wanted to kill Eleven, presumably playing a major role. Sullivan believed that Eleven was the problem, that her powers were causing the rifts rather than fighting them. The events at the end of Season 4 probably confirmed his worst fears. A massive gate has opened, the town is being consumed by the Upside Down, and Eleven is nowhere to be found. From Sullivan's perspective, this is all proof that he was right, that Eleven needs to be eliminated. But the synopsis suggests something interesting. that Sullivan might actually have a change of heart. One theory proposes that Sullivan realizes his hubris almost doomed civilization, that his obsessive focus on Eleven as the threat blinded him to the real danger. In Season 5, he might seek out Dr. Owens, the more sympathetic government scientist, and admit that they're going to need more than military force to stop this. They're going to need 11, and they're going to need every other surviving subject of the MK Ultra program. This could lead to an interesting subplot where the government desperately tries to track down and recruit all the numbered children. We know 8, Kali, is still out there somewhere. We know from Season 4 that not all the children died in the massacre. Maybe there are other survivors with different abilities who've been living in hiding all these years. Maybe the final battle involves not just 11, but a whole team of psychics working together, combining their abilities to combat Vecna and the Mind Flayer. The military quarantine also raises questions about the civilians of Hawkins. Are they trapped in the town, unable to leave? Are they being evacuated? The 18-month time jump suggests that some kind of equilibrium has been reached, that people are still living in Hawkins despite the gates being open. Maybe the military has managed to contain the spread of the Upside Down to certain areas, creating safe zones and danger zones. Or maybe people are just adapting, learning to live in a town that's half merged with another dimension, because what other choice do they have? This military presence also sets up potential conflict with our heroes. Nancy, Steve, Robin, and the others are going to want to act to fight Vecna directly. But the military might have different priorities, might want to contain and study rather than attack. There could be a point where our heroes have to go against military orders, have to sneak past checkpoints and quarantine lines to get to where they need to go. That adds another layer of tension, another obstacle beyond just the supernatural threat. The question of what the military has been doing for 18 months is fascinating. Have they been sending soldiers into the Upside Down? Have they been studying the gates, trying to understand the dimensional mechanics? Have they been experimenting on captured creatures, trying to weaponize them or find weaknesses? All of this is possible and could provide crucial information or resources for the final battle. There's also the possibility that the military's involvement makes things worse. Maybe their experiments destabilize the barriers between dimensions further. Maybe their weapons and technology interact with the Upside Down in unexpected ways, causing more rifts or attracting more creatures. The government in Stranger Things has never been portrayed as competent or trustworthy when dealing with the supernatural. Their interventions usually cause more problems than they solve. Season 5 might follow that pattern, with the military quarantine being revealed as counterproductive or actively harmful. Another character whose role in Season 5 needs more discussion is Dustin Henderson. We've already talked about him as a potential death candidate, but let's focus on his emotional state and what drives him in the final season. Dustin lost Eddie at the end of Season 4, watched his friend die in his arms after a heroic but ultimately futile attempt to distract the Demobats. That death has marked Dustin deeply. Gaten Matarazzo has said in interviews that Dustin is not processing Eddie's death in a healthy way. He's trying to keep Eddie's spirit alive through external means, changing his music taste, his clothing, trying to be more like Eddie, But this is avoidance, not healing. Dustin is wrapped up in the common goal of finding and killing Vecna to the point where he's not really dealing with the grief and trauma. He's channeling everything into revenge, into making Eddie's sacrifice mean something. This emotional state makes Dustin potentially reckless in Season 5. He might take unnecessary risks, might put himself in danger, because part of him feels like he should have died with Eddie, or that he needs to prove himself worthy of Eddie's sacrifice. Steve, as Dustin's close friend and quasi-big brother figure, is going to be trying to protect him, trying to keep him from doing something stupid, but Dustin might not be willing to listen. There's a beautiful and tragic element to the Steve-Dustin relationship that could reach its culmination in Season 5. Steve has always looked out for Dustin, has always been there to support him. If Steve does die, and the current theories suggest he might, having him die specifically to save Dustin would be a heartbreaking bookend to their relationship. It would also destroy Dustin emotionally, giving him a second death to process, a second person who sacrificed themselves for him. That's heavy stuff, and it would fundamentally change Dustin's character. But there's another possibility. Maybe Dustin is the one who dies trying to protect Steve. Maybe their relationship reverses, with Dustin putting himself in harm's way to save the person who's always saved him. That would be equally tragic, but would represent Dustin's growth, like his transformation from the kid who needed protection to someone willing to sacrifice himself for others. Either way, the Dustin-Steve dynamic is one of the emotional cores of Season 5, and whatever happens between them is going to wreck viewers emotionally. Now let's explore the final episode, The Right Side Up, and what that title might mean for how the series ends. It's clearly meant to mirror the Upside Down, bringing us full circle. The Upside Down represents corruption, decay, a world turned wrong side up. The right side up would represent restoration, healing, a return to the proper order of things. But what does that actually mean in practical terms? Does it mean that the Upside Down is destroyed, wiped out completely, the gates sealed forever? Does it mean that Hawkins returns to normal, that the town is restored to what it was before any of this happened? Or is it something more abstract, about the characters finding their right place in the world, about moral and emotional restoration rather than physical restoration? One theory is that the right side up refers to a complete inversion, where instead of our world being invaded by the Upside Down, the Upside Down is somehow transformed into a livable dimension. Maybe Eleven's final act isn't to destroy the Upside Down, but to heal it, to turn it from a realm of decay into something life-sustaining. This would be a profoundly hopeful ending, suggesting that even the darkest, most corrupted things can be redeemed and transformed. But there's a darker interpretation. Maybe the right side up is ironic. Maybe our world becomes the Upside Down, completely merged and transformed to the point where what was once right side up is now indistinguishable from what was upside down. This would be a truly bleak ending, with our heroes technically winning, but at the cost of everything they were trying to protect. The most likely scenario is something in between. The battle is won, Vecna is defeated, the gates are closed. But the cost is enormous. People are dead. Hawkins is changed forever. The characters who survive are traumatized, marked by what they've been through in ways that will never fully heal. And then there's a time jump, an epilogue showing us where everyone ends up 5 or 10 years down the line. This is where the theories about character endings come into play. Nancy becomes an investigative journalist in New York, exposing the truth about Hawkins and government experiments. Steve works with kids, maybe as a teacher or counselor, channeling his protective instincts into something constructive. Dustin runs a comic book store or a gaming shop, creating a space where nerds and outcasts can find community. Jonathan becomes a photographer, capturing the world as it is, rather than as it was. Joyce and Hopper, if they both survive, finally get their chance at a quiet life together. And Eleven, if she survives, gets to be just Jane, just a normal person living a normal life. The powers that defined her gone, but the friendships that sustained her still strong. Will's ending is harder to predict. Maybe he moves to California, finds love, continues to play D&D and make art. Maybe he becomes a counselor or therapist, helping other kids who've experienced trauma. Maybe he writes or draws the story of what happened, turning their nightmare into art that helps people understand. The very last scene of the series is what the Duffer Brothers wrote years ago and have never changed. They've said it's perfect, that it captures exactly what they want to say about the show and these characters. Fan theories about what that final scene might be range all over the place. Some think it will be the kids playing D&D again, older and changed but still together. Some think it will be a funeral, a memorial for those who didn't make it. Some think it will be Eleven walking away from Hawkins one last time, leaving her past behind to start fresh somewhere new. Personally, I think the final scene will be quiet. Not a big action beat, not a dramatic revelation, just a moment of peace. Maybe it's the surviving characters sitting together, not saying much, just being there for each other. Maybe it's someone visiting the grave of a friend who didn't make it, placing flowers and saying goodbye. Maybe it's Eleven and Will, the first and last victims of the Upside Down, acknowledging their shared connection and their survival. Whatever it is, the Duffer Brothers have promised it will be emotionally satisfying, which suggests that despite the pain and loss, there's hope at the end. The right side up might mean that even though things can never go back to exactly how they were, there's still good in the world, still friendship and love and meaning. The battle scars remain, but so does life. One final theory that's worth exploring is the possibility that the entire series has been a time loop, that the ending will reveal we've been watching events that are destined to repeat. This theory suggests that Will's disappearance in 1983 wasn't the beginning, but rather one iteration of a cycle that's been going on for years, decades, maybe centuries. The Upside Down is frozen in time because time itself is trapped in a loop, and every attempt to break free only leads back to the beginning. This would explain some of the stranger aspects of the show's mythology. Why does the Upside Down look exactly like Hawkins? Because it's not a parallel dimension, but rather an echo, a shadow cast by the same events playing out over and over. Why do certain characters seem to have knowledge or instincts they shouldn't have? Because on some level, they've lived through this before. Why does Vecna seem so confident, so assured of his victory? Because he's seen how this ends, has watched the cycle complete and begin again countless times. If this theory is true, then the only way to truly end the threat would be to break the loop, to do something different enough that the cycle can't repeat. Maybe that's what the right side up represents. Not just defeating Vecna, but fundamentally altering the nature of time and reality in Hawkins so that this can never happen again. It's a wild theory, probably too complex for what the Duffer Brothers are actually planning. But it's fun to consider, and it would certainly explain some of the show's mysteries in an elegant way. As we come to the end of this deep dive into Stranger Things, Season 5 theories and speculation, I want to acknowledge something. We've spent hours together tonight exploring these possibilities, these dark and hopeful futures, these theories about who lives and who dies and what it all means. And the truth is, we don't know any of it for certain. We won't know until the episodes actually air, until we sit down on November 26th and start watching Volume 1, until we make it through Christmas and arrive at that final episode on New Year's Eve. What we do know is that the Duffer Brothers have crafted something special with Stranger Things. They've created characters we love, a world we're invested in, mysteries that have kept us theorizing for years. And they've promised that Season 5 will bring it all to a close in a way that honors everything that's come before. There will be tears, there will be losses, there will be moments that break our hearts, and moments that make us cheer. There will be answers to questions we've been asking since 2016, and probably new questions that we never thought to ask. It's going to be a ride, and whatever happens, we'll experience it together as a community of fans who've been on this journey from the beginning. So thank you for spending this evening with me, for letting me guide you through the theories and speculation, through the darkness and the hope. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. It helps tremendously and lets me know you're interested in more long-form explorations of the stories and worlds we love. But for now, let yourself drift off. Dream of Hawkins and the Upside Down, of brave kids fighting monsters, of friendships that transcend dimensions. Dream of endings, both tragic and hopeful, and know that when we finally see how this story concludes, we'll be there together, processing it as a community, saying goodbye to these characters we've grown to love over nearly a decade. Sweet dreams, my friends. May your night be peaceful, and may the morning bring you rest and renewal. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, in the darkest moments, it's our connections to each other, our friendships and love and loyalty that light the way forward. Good night.